next up, we have Professor Rory McGloin. And as someone who sat in his lecture hall at 8 a.m., I knew he would be the right person to get everyone engaged after the break. So he is the Associate Director of Connecticut Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at UConn School of Business, a Professor of Business Communications. So welcome to the stage, Professor Rory McGloin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jen. I'm told that I have to speak into a microphone because we're recording audio, so I'll do as I'm told, like a great student. The student has now become the teacher. That's fantastic. Good morning, folks, and welcome back from the break. I would like to thank Michelle and everybody from her team for making this happen, and the folks at the Bushnell for their hospitality as always. As Jen mentioned, I am a professor at the University of Connecticut. Amongst other things, I'm a Hartford and Connecticut born native and take great pride in my state. And I'm here today to tell you a story about a program that we call Build Hartford. The word story and narrative has been used rather consistently if you've been here with us all morning. And ironically, serendipitously, or maybe intentionally at best, story is at the center of what Build Hartford is all about. And I not only want to share the story of Build Hartford and what we've done for Connecticut Main Streets, but also to inspire and potentially empower you to reach out and think about how Build Hartford and programs like Build Hartford may be of service to your business as well as to the constituencies in which you serve. So I've been up at UConn for 20 years and most recently had the opportunity to become the instructor of record, as we call it, for this Build Hartford course. The Build Hartford course came to be from a donation from Sherry and Michael Cantor. Some of you may know Sherry as the mayor of West Hartford, Michael Cantor being the founder of Cantor and Colburn Law Firm right here in Hartford. And one of the things that Michael said one day, very early on when he came to visit with our students, he said, I made the donation ultimately because I wanted Hartford to be vibrant. I wanted a space that would make it easier for me as an owner of a law firm to recruit and to attract the top talented lawyers coming out of law school each year. That lit a fire in me as I sat in the back of the room as a faculty member on the verge of taking over the course to try to guide it in the way that I thought would be best. Originally, the course was described as being one in which we would go out and we would study how many empty apartments there would be, right? How much parking lot space was potentially available to be reused. That is not what students are interested in doing. In fact, if you think back to your time as a college student, wherever you went to school, do I have any Huskies in the room? UConn. Okay, all right, here we go. It's our weekend. So one of the things that we think about during our time is that when you were a student, you went to learn, but you went to not just learn in a classroom. You wanted experiences that would resonate and last a lifetime. You wanted to make friends that would last a lifetime. And today's students, right, they want to gather. They want to come together. Learning has gone remote. Learning has gone asynchronous. But there are definitively things that you cannot do in a Zoom room that you can do in a coffee shop right here in the Bushnell, that you can do at the Webster, that you can do on Pratt Street. So we reconfigured the entire thought, and I'm here today to challenge all of higher education at once. To say that the days of exams and blue books and rubrics and quizzes, they're gone, right? If students want a vocational experience, let's give it to them. If businesses want young people to come into their business and find out what they're all about, let's give them the power to do so. All it takes is for us to move together, all of us, right? Those of us sending students to school, those of us in school, those of us funding schools, those of us working with schools. Because we have students in the room right now. Jesus is one of our Build Hartford students. He's here and he's taking content. The content's going to end up on my LinkedIn in a little bit. It's going to end up on his LinkedIn in a little bit. We're going to share it with Connecticut Main Street. We're going to tell the story of why we were here today. That's what students want to do. Jesus isn't in a classroom on a Thursday afternoon. He's downtown Hartford, and hopefully he'll make friends with some of you before the day is done. When students walk into the classroom on the very first day of Build Hartford, I like to show them this photo, and I ask them a question, and I say, folks, this is a picture of Hartford. We've all been, hopefully spent some time there on the lawn. And I ask them, I said, what do you know about Hartford? And that sounds about like what the classroom sounds like. And it's not because they don't want to. It's because we need to do a better job collectively of telling the stories of the places that we care about. We can go back in time. Story has transcended our civilizations. That's what we have built our societies on. That's how we pass along generations and concepts of legacies and heritages and tradition through story. Before there was mass media marketing, there was a theory of two-step flow. You had somebody in your life, they told you that Gas Burgers was good, so you went and checked it out. You have to build a community online today, but at the end of the day, what we know is what's going to have a bigger imprint is the experience that you have and simply what story you share. And so when students come back that live in Wethersfield, in West Hartford, in Vernon, in Rockville, in Tapville, in Tolland, and they say, I don't really know, and I ask them a question. I say, do you go to Hartford? No. And I say, why? They go, is there anything to do there? And of course, if you've been to Hartford, you know that there's plenty of things to do here, but you know that because you've been here. Are you telling anybody? Some of you shaking your head, yes, I appreciate that. Let's keep that going, right? And for wherever we're from, are we telling the story? Because we can rely on departments of economic development, we can rely on our lawmakers, and we can rely on the work of Michelle, but at the end of the day, we're going to have a heck of a lot more influence on our networks than anybody else that's going to rely on us to do it for them. So the challenge is right there. So I asked the students right there, so what do you want to learn about Hartford? And they say, of course, the things that you wanted to learn in college, right? Where do I go out? Where do I get a coffee? Where do I get an ice cream? Where can I go dance? Where can I hear live music? Where can I hear comedy? And then the idea was born. In higher education today, we've lost sight of the fact that hospitality, entertainment are industries that rely on us to go, but if we focus entirely on only the things that we might find in STEM, we might lose sight of the fact that the things that many of us do for fun, which is to grab a beer and a burger with our friends, if there's nobody populating that industry, who's going to be there left for us? So I thought to myself, here's an idea. I'm passionate about helping others communicate effectively. Build Hartford provides a platform where we can teach students how to tell business communication stories, and best of all, we're gonna send them out to the coffee shops, we're gonna send them to the music venues, and we're gonna have them walk in, not to do marketing, but to just simply extract the story of what is the Bushnell? Why is it here? How is it 100 years old? What kind of stories do they put on? And why would a college student want to step foot into this place to have an experience? What would they get out of it? And we've done it repeatedly. And now I'm here today not just to share the story, but to try to get us to think about how can the universities in our neighborhoods, how can the high schools in our neighborhoods potentially utilize a program like this to be able to incentivize young people to develop their business communication storytelling skills to help you achieve your goals. You have a population of relatively intelligent people well on their way to taking your job who want the experience. And frankly, they'll trade their time not for money, but just for the opportunity to go and put something on their resume, to go and put something on their portfolios that would make a difference. My goal by the end of the semester is when we put this picture up to ask the same question and to get a completely different answer. Not one that is I'm not sure if it's safe, but one that I love. And in fact, some of the students over the last 2.5 years have said, I think I actually want to stay. And not just students from New Hampshire, New York, and Rhode Island. We're talking about students from Iran. We're talking about students from Brazil, students from South Africa who have found their way into the course saying, I think that this might actually be a place for me. The Connecticut that we talk about is one where legislators are saying, let's live, work, play here. We can put the billboards up, but it's stories, it's experiences that genuinely make you part of a community, that make you part of a neighborhood. And so we're doing this on a very small granular level when you look at the size of Connecticut and the mountain that we have to climb and the conversations that we're having today. But this is just another way that I think we can do this. So the reason we focused on Hartford was because that was where ultimately the funding went to. But obviously, there's opportunity and room for a program like Build to grow into the towns and cities that you're a part of. So real quickly, how does it work? For those of you that are interested in a little bit more detail, as I mentioned, my background's in business communication, and so at the epicenter of that, you have an audience and you have a message sender, and my job each week is to help them curate what a story is. We talk about stories start with nouns. So the idea is that the story starts with a noun. So at the fabric in the center of each business, there's a noun. And it might be their people, it could be their founder, it could be their product, it could be their location. And once we identify what that is, then we extrapolate from there and we think about what do we want to share in that story. So not only are we talking about business, but we're actually learning bona fide foundational storytelling skills. If you've hung out with somebody that's a great storyteller, guess what? You want to hang out with them again. And if you've hung out with somebody that's not a great storyteller, you want to hang out with them again. So I'm also just trying to send my students back out into the world being a little bit better storytellers. And they might take that home, and hopefully if they do anything with it, they build some better relationships. And that's gonna make them ideally more employable, which is also good for Connecticut as well. From there, we go out and we find business partners. We find anybody that'll say yes to us. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? We came and asked the Bushnell about 6 months ago. We said, will you be our spring partner? They said yes. Alex, not sure if she's floating around here today, said yes to us. They invited the students in. They went backstage. They got to see every nook and cranny of the Bushnell, things that you and I would appreciate. By the way, if anybody here from Travelers, I'm still trying to get up to the top of the tower. So that's a request that I have. I want to take my class up there. Aren't we all? Michelle says. But we haven't just worked with the Bushnell, which is a household name here in Connecticut. We've also worked with coffee shops like Story and Soil, who make amazing coffee, but have become a third space for much of Hartford's community and everybody in between. Now, here's what's interesting. There's been some businesses that have said no thanks. And that tells a story too, right? Because I think that if your business is in a situation where maybe you're not ready to have a group of undergraduates and graduate students walk through your space, then I don't know if you're ready for a place like Hartford, because this is a community, this is a culture. This is a culture of immigrants, right? We just find a different generation of where we're from, but we've all come from somewhere in many regards to places like Hartford, like Bridgeport, like New Haven, like Waterbury. And so I challenge us, if we're business owners in here, to think about how do we open our doors to these programs to make ourselves accessible, right? It's easy to sit back and say, what could somebody else do? But sometimes it might just be as easy as reaching out and saying, would you like to come? Because there are many students across this great state that would really love to have your hospitality for just a moment. And I'll share some examples of those success stories in just a minute. The students make presentations. They do not make marketing content. They make stories, and they're presented just the way that you like them on digital reels. At the end of my slide, I'm going to put up my LinkedIn, my name. If you follow me, I just shared one this morning intentionally, so you can go and look at the piece that we put together for TheaterWorks, and it's awesome. It is plug and play. They could buy ad time with it right now and put it up. But they're not all amazing, because the students don't come to us as digital storytellers. They come from all over the university, from the MBA program, from the PharmD program. We've had first semester freshmen show up this class. And what's really powerful about this is the vast majority of our students, right, they reside in stores. And they're driving 40 minutes, or in some cases, we have a woman right now in a wheelchair who takes a bus out here to be a part of this program. And it's really incredible, because the types of students that are willing to travel for a course are the types of students I think that you're going to really enjoy engaging with. So we've built this a little alumni network, and we now are closing in on having about 100 students, and we're building this brand. And we think that we're objective, and we think that we mean well, meaning that we don't work for a marketing agency, and we're simply telling stories that we think are important to the community, because Main Streets need us to be able to tell those stories. This is our classroom. So the Build Hartford program is housed at the Connecticut Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and that is a space that is synonymous primarily with entrepreneurship, primarily synonymous with the accelerator programs that we run throughout the year, particularly our big program in the summer. We're used to working with entrepreneurs, startups, seed funding, going out and finding investment. Think Shark Tank. That's where we're comfortable. That's where our space is. So it's been a lot of fun to be able to bring students in this center and say to them very clearly, you don't have to be a founder to support the entrepreneurial community. You can be a storyteller and be the most important person on the team. Because you can have great burgers, but if nobody knows about them, nobody's coming. Right? Communication will still be the most important skill set of any business, of any Main Street. Right? We have to tell our story in a way that's compelling, because ultimately, right, that's what's going to drive people to want to be a part of the community that we're trying to build. So when we come in here, this is a powerful picture right there. Chelsea Mancini's on the right, so some of you guys might know her. She's a member of the board, right, and for the Hartford Metro Alliance there. And we were just at Chelsea's restaurant, Red Rock Tavern, Oldest Tavern in Hartford, for those of you from Hartford. And these are folks who have plenty of things to do, and they give us their time. And they show up, and sometimes they come in for hours, right, and they love it, and they have an opportunity to share their story. Michelle was with us in class yesterday. Class was at Red Rock Tavern. We had lunch, and the students had class in a bar. We drank water, right? But the point is there were times where it was hard to hear. And there were times where there were people coming in and out of the neighborhood, right? Hartford PD showed up and picked up their lunch, right? Some of the local guys who were doing construction came in and picked up their lunch. Now we have a learning experience. And now they're getting to see exactly who they're trying to serve in a way that you can't get at Laurel or Oak Hall when you're up at stores. And that's really what makes this quite special. But the other thing that stands out are these folks right here. Now, these is just some of the logos that we were able to fit on here. What's missing is The Bushnell, right, was our partner this spring. We worked with Theater Works, Hartford Prince, Rory, and the work that she's done on Pratt Street to be an ambassador for the city of Hartford. We have each of these folks. I know you do. If you have a small town, you know exactly who is leading the charge. And we have an opportunity to bring them into our classrooms, to connect them with our young people, and to allow our young people to appreciate that the place that they're going to school, or that the place that they're growing up, or if they want new ball fields, that runs in economics. And if they can tell a better story about the town that they live, we've got an opportunity to pass a little bit more legislation. We're trying to pass legislation in Colchester, where I'm from, to put in new fields. And you got a bunch of adults going and petitioning for it. I think it would be a lot better if you actually had the kids go out and petition for it. But if we're not training them to tell a story, like, can we really ask them to do that, right? And this is where there's an opportunity, I think, to change the way that we think about engaging our main streets, and by bringing younger generations in and giving them responsibility for the stories that we're trying to get them to ultimately tell. This is what we look like. We take field trips. We walk around. This was us last semester, and we took a walk, and in that photo there, you have students, all of them from different states, and you have 3 different countries represented in that photo. It's pretty cool that people are coming to our space, and they're going home. We have a young lady who's returning to South America at May in graduation, and she said, I get to go home and tell my mom about where I went to school, about what I did, right? Her Main Street experience. So while, of course, we would love just more of our neighbors to come out and to experience our thing, we are still an international brand. We still have hope and opportunity that we can continue to be a space that attracts those from foreign shores. Just some highlighted stories. These are household brands to most of you. Theater Works, I got to give them a shout out. They allowed our students to go backstage for Christmas on the Rocks. These were students from Romania that had never had a chance to see anything like this, and now all of a sudden they're having this experience. And the content that they created did justice to those free tickets that were offered. 5 free tickets were given. The stories that were created, I think, relatively from a marketing standpoint, were probably fairly priceless. Urban Lodge, Michael Garrity, day one of our first partners, said, yes, Michael's brewing beers with UConn's logo on it. So it's a no-brainer for him to want UConn students to walk through his doors and see the lodge that he created. So what are the spaces that we have on Main Street right now that we would love to have young people walk into? And so I have a formula, I have an idea, I have a curriculum, and really what I wanted to do is share it with everybody today and try to kind of inspire us in some regards to think differently about how we can kind of go and approach this challenge. Hartford Prince, if you're familiar with Pratt Street, then you know Hartford Prince. Rory has become, in many regards, an ambassador. We did a piece on them, and it was really quite amazing. And Fire by Fours, I got to give a big shout out to Ben DeBow, another board member who said yes to us from day one, who has given us space, and we're hosting an event there on April 29th. And if anybody is remotely excited about any of the things that I'm saying right now, and you think, hey, this is for me, and I want to hang out with Rory and his students, and I want to learn about this program, we're having an event on 4/29. It's relatively invite only. Why? Because I want to pack the room with people that are passionate about business storytelling in Connecticut Main Street businesses. So if that's something for you, come find me. I'd love to put you on that invite list so we can fill that room with people that care. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more on my other call to action before we finish. Your Chamber of Commerces need your help. They can't do it alone, right? I think we just heard from some folks that talked about a party of one. We hooked up with the Hartford Chamber of Commerce, for example, this past year, the Hartford for the Holidays. If you were on Instagram and you saw some Hartford for the Holidays content stuff, there's a good chance some Build Hartford students actually made that content. How cool is that? They're making content, and then they're seeing their stuff go up, and now their content is actually something that somebody's using. You know what that tells a young person? I have value I can create. We started businesses, ironically, out of the Build program, unintentionally, because we have newfound editors and videographers and photographers and salespeople who realize, hey, I quite like this stuff. And they probably thought that their career path was to go work for a big company. I said this to Michelle yesterday. I think we've got to move past like the big company mindset. Let's get people thinking about small business mindset. AI is going to displace a lot of jobs. What it can't displace are relationships. It can't displace you and me having a vibe and sharing energy in a space. I think there's an opportunity for us to leverage that in some regard. And then finally, and this might be my favorite part, like I said, I'd love to hook up with everybody in here on LinkedIn and follow and share each other's story and celebrate our success. The students who typically, when they come to me, don't have very much in their LinkedIn because they don't think they have anything to post because we haven't trained them how to tell a story, that changes, right? There's 15 posts, one each week. And it means that you go through the world and you stop and you take a photo, right? And maybe it's gratitude for that day. Maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe you've made a network connection. And they share their content and they tag the places that we go and they tag the people that they meet and they tag me and I reshare their content to try to build their network. This is working together on Main Street, right? It doesn't just have to be brick and mortar. We can do it in the virtual space if we want. And here you just have a semblance of examples, right? We have an animator who took a year later, that logo from Rory, and she animated it, and she was able to send it back to Rory and say, here's an animated version of your logo that you drew up when you first opened. Right? What a gift that was. We had a set of students make a video for the Red Rock Tavern that went back to Chelsea, and she texted me back. She said, I just watched that with my dad, and we all cried. Like, so we're making pieces that like are changing people's lives, and that to me is the community that a lot of us were talking about wanting to be a part of, and this is a way I think for us to bridge the gap, simply by allowing young people to have an opportunity to hone their skills so that they can do many of the things that we wanted to do when we were that age. So, tricky clicker. So that's me, but that's my name, and I'd love to connect with every person in this room on LinkedIn if you're so inclined to do so. And I want to tell you just a little bit about a call to action I have. So the program, which is 5 years running, and I've had a chance to be the instructor of record for the last 2.5. It was funded by a very generous donation from our friends at Cantors, who have been lifelong Husky supporters and have supported us in a multitude of ways. The funding is coming to an end. And I am hosting this event on 4/29 to bring people like us together, but to also try to find our next partners and continue the legacy that the Cantors helped us to build and to create. Because what we want, right, is to be able to build this program throughout. And so, is this a pitch? Yeah, but why wouldn't you use your platform for just 1 second, right? What I'm looking for is funds to go that ultimately support the students so that when they drive 45 minutes, we can pay for their parking tickets. So maybe we can throw a few dollars to bring them to Red Rock, to actually offer them a slice of pizza, to show them that actually the world is good and there's plenty of opportunity for them. If there's corporate sponsors out in this room today, they're thinking, I'd love to attach my brand to that because you now get to say you supported a program that's actually building Main Streets, let me know. And we're going to have a UConn Gives Drive, and we're going to try to do that the right way. And the best part about it is we're going to put the students front and center on this. So we're actually going to give them a persuasive campaign that they're working on for the next 6 weeks. And we're going to say, hey, we can actually go out and do this ourselves. Like, we can be at the center of the need and the want that we can change this world. The Build Hartford program has meant a great deal to me, and you might be able to feel my passion for this, but it really stems from the fact that ultimately we've had a lot of young people be very grateful for this opportunity because it changed the way that they thought about higher ed, and most importantly, it changed the way that they thought about Connecticut. We have people that are choosing to stay here now because they met somebody, they had an experience, and they ultimately felt like, you know what, maybe I do belong here, but we can't do that from a distance. It's got to be shared space. It has to ultimately be together. I appreciate the time and the platform to be here with all of you today who are invested in this. Thank you for taking time out of your days, and I'm looking forward to connecting with everybody really soon.